Anthony, 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 Anthony. Anthony, 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 A-N-T-H-O-N-Y, Anthony, A-N-T-H-O-N-Y, Anthony, 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 Anthony. Anthony.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the loyal Unity News viewers. It's just past 12 midday on Friday the 7th of October 2022. It's the 280th day of this year, with 85 days left to go before the end of the year. So Christmas is looming ever closer. So yes, I'm back on a Friday now after doing some Mondays, but the team at Unity News are quite good at shuffling around and doing different days and helping each other out. So we've all got to play our part with that. Anyway, welcome to the Anthony Webber Perspectives programme, and this will be, as usual, a summary of news and political issues with a different perspective, and certainly not just my perspective but Unity News as well, to suit the Unity News viewers. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm on Twitter, it's at Tony_Webber. I'm on Facebook, Anthony David Webber, and you could actually help the National Alliance for Freedom, because they've had to start their Twitter account again, usual problems, but that's on Twitter, it's at National Ali, so National, and then at the end of National, capital A, and then double L-I. So there we go. So what's the programme for today? I'm going to give a brief summary of the party conferences we've just had, an update on how long will Liz Truss last as Prime Minister, what special days there are today, update on Unity News, some thoughts about where we are with free speech at the moment in the UK, and the latest with the state of the NHS, some comments about the sad passing away of Jeff Wyatt, who's a well-known freedom fighter, the update on the delayed debate, parliamentary debate, on the public inquiry into COVID-19 vaccine safety, and the campaign for the UK to be neutral in the Ukraine, and on that one we will be looking for people to basically sign up and help, not just with the petition but in other ways as well, but more on that later. Why we need choice in elections, because the general election will be no further away than January 2025, it can't be any later than that, and before then we'll certainly be having local elections. I can't see the Conservative Party wanting to risk having a general election not for some time soon. Then there's going to be an update on the migrants and immigration situation, where we are with the strikes in the UK, the UK public inquiry into COVID COVID-19 pandemic, as they call it, and the handling of it. Something about the new medical declaration, which has been made by a number of freedom doctors and other professionals. What freedom campaigns, or some of them, are due to continue or start. Update on Energy Cross, and more on Ukraine and indeed Afghanistan. So let's start with the party conferences. Well, some people will remember that I mentioned Operation Overreach, which is a great venture of a number of freedom organisations getting together. Started off via the Coordinating Organisation Movement and Movements, and Operation Overreach is primarily run by Save Our Rights. And what they've been doing, they've had some great banners, great posters, great leaflets, and obviously a lot of people viewing today will know all about that, but they have been going to the party conferences to be outside and get the message across to people attending these party conferences. Of course, we know the Lib Dems didn't have theirs. They postponed it because of the situation with the late passing of Her Majesty. They were up at Liverpool for the Labour conference, and in Birmingham for the Conservative one, and they're on their way up with locals to go to the SNP conference at Aberdeen. Not sure if they're the sort of people who listen to reason, but they're at least trying. There are other conferences coming up, the DUP in Northern Ireland and one or two other parties. There was the Green conference at Harrogate, but they couldn't go to that one. So Operation Overreach is basically all about 10 government bills where the government are overreaching on their powers and further restricting our freedoms and liberties. So obviously we from the freedom movements are doing our bit to ensure that we protect our freedoms, and obviously a major part of that battle is to put pressure on MPs not to vote for things which are going to further curtail our liberties. So anyway, that's if anyone wants to find out more about Operation Overreach, all they need to do is to go on the Save Our Rights Facebook page or their website, and there's plenty of information there. But just to give you some of the examples of the bills which it involves, the Bill of Rights, the School Bill, Higher Education Bill, Online Harms Bill, National Security Bill, Genetic Precision Breeding Bill, Boycotts Bill, Public Order Bill, Brexit Freedoms Bill, and Economic Crimes Bill. That's just some of them. So that's the situation we've got there, and we're all going to be doing our bit in that respect. So the next thing I'm going to mention is the party conferences themselves. As a media representative, I did go to one or two. I always take the view that I'm a guest there, and I obviously have to report and not make comments, although I have been known to make comments. But I think what might be helpful is to explain what happens at these party conferences. And basically, the bigger the conference, the bigger the attendance, but also the bigger number of meetings they have. So you tend to find, say, with the Conservative conference, which is at Birmingham, was the same as Labour in terms of having the same amount of time for sort of main hall speaking and that sort of thing. They do literally have hundreds of fringe meetings which are to do with all sorts of political issues and also other issues which are on the political sidelines, like charitable groups, public sector groups, basically groups who want to influence government policy. And you have slightly less with Labour, but I do have to point out that if Labour were the party in power, there would be more groups wanting to attend their conference and influence what is actually sort of happening there. But basically, it's absolutely impossible to go to all the meetings because sometimes there's a choice of about 10 on at the same time. But what we have had is a situation with Liz Truss where for whatever reason, through the process they had as electing a new leader of the Conservative Party and thus by default the Prime Ministership of the country, Liz Truss has become Prime Minister. Now, what we need to bear in mind is, yes, according to the system they had, she won that contest, but when you are a party which is only 2 years away from an election and you're suffering in the opinion polls, what you should be doing is trying to unify your party and get your party prepared so that it does as well as possible in a general election. Now, what has actually happened is it appears that a wing of the Conservative Party have actually taken over power, and this, it explains why some of the things have happened recently where there's been quite a fuss made of. Now, you can understand this because some of these policies which Liz Truss has put forward, she not only hasn't got a mandate for because they were not in the 2019 party general election manifesto, but they weren't even in her manifesto for leadership of the Conservative Party. And certainly talking to one or two people at the conference, I did hear one or two people say to me that they regretted voting for Liz Truss because they felt she wasn't doing what she sort of said she was doing, and that they were being a bit misled. Having said that, I'm sure there's people who voted for Rishi Sunak who would say they wish they voted for Liz Truss. But the point is, we've got policies which are being foisted on the nation which have got no electoral mandate. And in my very humble opinion, I think it would have been more sensible for the Conservative Party to focus on policies which united their party and which would be popular enough for them to win the election. And what we've had is a party conference where people have gone away and there's further division. Now, I do need to point out that with any party conference, obviously the objective is to give a good impression to the party members and to motivate the party members and to give a good impression of the party to the wider public. So this will explain why there was, quite a lot of cheers and applause, etc. for Liz Truss and some of the other speakers, because you're not going to go to a party conference and be critical of your own leaders, although this is something you may do privately or afterwards. And this is the same with other parties. People might remember when UKIP were very strong, you wouldn't have brazen criticism of what was said on the platform. It would be said at sort of other occasions. We've got a situation where I think it was really important for the new Prime Minister to come to this conference and succeed in, by the end of it, bringing the party together with a sense of unity and so on. And I think sadly for her, I don't think she achieved that. And yes, there'd been a lot of the sort of old mainstream media criticising Liz Truss, but a lot of what is said has got quite a lot of truth in it. There are said to be a number of MPs who are writing or have already written letters to the chairman of the 1922 committee, and if they get sufficient numbers of those, that means it would trigger a leadership election. Now, there's two schools of thought on this. One is that it would be an absolute disaster for the Conservative Party to have another leadership election. It would just make them look absolutely terrible. The other school of thought is if Liz Truss continues to come up with the wrong sort of policies and is continuing to reduce the popularity of the party in the country, then perhaps the Conservatives might be better off with a new leader who can will still have some time to recover for the party before the general election. And you know, some people say, well, you know, she hasn't even had 100 days, you know, give her the time. Other people take the view that she had to hit the ground running, not with policies which were without any mandate, but with an improvement of the policies which had got a mandate in such a way as it brought the party together. So, I mean, we all know what an awful state the country is in, so it's very important to have the best possible leadership for that. And the mini budget, which apparently wasn't even discussed with the new cabinet before it was launched to the public, is an example of where you know, you should get things done a lot better than that. And it's so important to have advice and take that advice, and not take advice after the damage is done. And it was interesting that one of the Christian online publications recently did an article on, they said, the 7 lessons which Christian pastors have to learn from Liz Truss as to how to best lead people. And they're basically saying if pastors led their congregations like Liz Truss is leading her party in the nation, it would be an absolute disaster. And I won't go into all the reasons, but they did give a number of reasons as to points which could be learned from Liz Truss. So it's not really a very good start when you've got organisations all over the place even sort of saying Liz Truss's first days of leadership don't set a very good example of leadership itself. Anyway, my personal view is that Liz Truss is very likely to have gone by Christmas. And I said the same thing about Boris Johnson. I said he would be going, and a lot of people said at the time, no, he can't possibly. Anyway, I take no pleasure in saying that, but I think it's actually come about because of 2 things actually. One, the 1922 committee, who changed the rules for standing for leader of the party, and they insisted that 20 MPs had to nominate people. Now, when you consider they had about 12 candidates and, 350 odd MPs, if you're a pretty much a newcomer but with a lot of talent, it's going to be very difficult for you to get the 20 nominations. Now, I'm in the Electoral Reform Society, where they believe you shouldn't have to have any nominations at all for standing for office. You should simply depend upon whether the voter actually wants to vote for you. So I think the 22 committee made a big mistake, because you go back to when David Cameron was made the leader of the Conservative Party, I think in his 2010, he had never even been in government. He was only a junior shadow minister, but he managed to win that election. He was young, made people optimistic. Now, I'm very critical of the governments of David Cameron, but what I'm trying to say with this is he did immediately unify the party and get them working together. And that is what a new leader of the party's got to do. He's got to find some way of getting the broad churches, which are in all political parties, to find common ground and actually work together. The other thing is, I believe some of the media actually really influenced who became leader of the Conservative Party, and in particular the Daily Mail literally pushed and pushed and pushed for Liz Truss to be the new leader, and it was basically not very complimentary about any of the other candidates, and they wouldn't have anything bad said about Liz Truss. And that's not impartial journalism, because when you've got as important a position as that, you really need to have the full facts and make a decision accordingly. But my personal view is, out of all their 350 plus MPs, there were some other MPs. The Conservative Party did need somebody new, somebody not tainted by being in the old cabinets, and they lost a chance this time round, but who knows what will happen if there'll be a new leadership election. So we'll have to watch the space on that. Now, here's one of the favourite parts of my programme, which is what special days are today. Now, it's Friday the 7th of October, and those who were born in this period of September the 22nd to October the 23rd will know they are Libra birth signs, and apparently Librans are social butterflies, an air sign, and bring balance, harmony and fairness. Seems like that's something which is very much needed on the political scene at the moment, with people really being having a go at people rather than trying to work in harmony in them. But anyway, it's a National Bathtub Day today, so if you've got one of these sort of unique bathtubs, perhaps you want to stay in it all day, I don't know. A couple of positive days today is World Smile Day. That's something I need to do a lot more, much more smiling, because so many bad news in the day. We need to look for things to actually smile at. So anyway, let's do our best to smile with all the people we know. It's also the International Day of Peaceful Communication. Well, you go back years ago, and you had President Gorbachev of the USSR and Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan. They were able, whatever their other faults, to go into peaceful communication. Now, can you think of many world leaders who are up to that task? Unfortunately, not, and that's what we really need to pray for. Pray for better quality national and international leaders. It's also National Forgiveness and Happiness Day, and that's very much in tune with a couple of the other ones I've just mentioned. So let's go for, you know, forgiving some of those things which we haven't been happy about, which other people have done, and let's go for happiness. And in tune with this, it's National Inner Beauty Day. What makes you beautiful and shine? You know, instead of being in the doldrums, look deep inside of you and find those inner qualities. And when you find those, there's also today You Matter to Me Day, and there'll be people you know who are close to you, maybe family, maybe friends. It's a chance for you to bond with loved ones and with friends and so on. It's National Frap Day today, which is it's an epic American drink for those of you who know. National Manufacturing Day, and we certainly need a lot of improvement on that with the UK. It's National Body Language Day. You can tell a lot with body language, and sometimes you can cause people upset because they misread your body language. So we need to be better with this. It's Kids Music Day, and isn't it an absolute delight when you know, young children are able to have musical talents of whatever they are. It is absolutely great, and the reason I say that is because I've got none, and I've got so much respect for people who've got musical ability. So anyway, what else have we got today? We've got Stem Cell and Bone Marrow Awareness Day, a very important issue, and Plaid Day, which is those who like plaid shirts and jackets. And anyone called Jonathan listening or watching, because it's National Jonathan Day today, and the Hebrew interpretation of that is God has bestowed, and in the Bible Jonathan is described as King Saul's oldest son, a man of tremendous might. So if you're a Jonathan, you are of tremendous might, so well done there. It's also National LED Light Day, World Cotton Day. Now, would you believe whose birthday is it today? Apart from probably some of you viewing, it's also Simon Cowell's birthday, and it's also Vladimir Putin's 70th birthday. He was born in 1952, and he was made president of Russia in 2020. He actually, when he last had an approval rating in 2020, it was 60%, which is pretty high for a national leader. He first became Prime Minister of Russia in 1999, then became President in 2000. So he's in his fourth presidential term, and a lot of people don't know he's got a deep love of animals. I mean, people know that he likes horses and dogs and that sort of thing, but he's actually brought about legislation in Russia to protect animals, and particularly protect animals who are abandoned. And he has also reduced Russia's poverty by half. I didn't actually know that. But he also speaks German quite fluently as a second language. I didn't know that either. And I also didn't know that he's a great fan of the Beatles and absolutely loves the song Yesterday. I mean, a lot of us would probably like singing that on occasion. The next thing to mention is, would you believe today, was on this day in October 2001, the US invasion of Afghanistan started with an air assault and covert operations on the ground. Of course, very sadly, the Americans and NATO have done a betrayal deal with the Taliban, and they basically handed it back to the Taliban. So complete betrayal of 26 million Afghans, and not just the hundreds of British forces who made the sacrifice there, but the thousands of wounded as well. Not to forget the literally thousands and thousands of Afghan forces who lost their lives and were wounded as well, all because of this betrayal of this deal with the Taliban. Now, some people like to know what special days are on the next day, so Saturday the 8th of October, it's National Chess Day. Actually, somebody asked me to teach them how to play chess. It's a great game, so I might well be having a go at that. It's National Harbour Master Day, and that's a really important job across ports in the UK and across other countries in the world. It's also National Heroes Day. Now, that's not just for normal heroes. It's the average person who does a heroic act for the next door neighbour or somebody crossing the street. Could be anything, but it is National Heroes Day. It's I Love Yarn Day. That's the knitting and crochet and so on. So get your stuff out tomorrow. National Salmon Day. Yes, I sort of quite like, well, smoked salmon I like, but there's many types of salmon. So Saturday is the day to have the salmon, and if you like octopus, it's National Octopus Day as well. That is a very, very old mammal, dating back, I think, even to before the dinosaurs. They've still got these octopuses. It's the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. He's the founder of the Islam religion. It's Universal Music Day, and for those people who called Justin and Lance, it's their special day tomorrow, so it's worth bearing that in mind if you got that name. It's also Pastor Appreciation Day. Those people who go to church or have a pastor or priest or vicar, you can appreciate your vicar then. It's the Leif Erikson Day. Now, people probably know that Leif Erikson repeatedly took the first Nordic people to America in, would you believe, 1000 AD, which is a few hundred years before Christopher Columbus, but there we go. Now, I'm just going to briefly say something about Sunday the 9th. It's National Kick Butt Day. So if there's a bad habit you want to kick in the butt, then you can do it on Sunday. National Porters Day, to celebrate all the work that porters throughout the UK do. World Homeless Day, well, sadly that's getting worse and worse and worse, and we must do our best to help people who are homeless. World Porridge Day, absolutely love porridge, so I'll be tucking into that. And I'll also be taking full advantage of the fact it's International Beer and Pizza Day. Absolutely a great day to go for. Now, it just so happens that if you miss a certain day, in the whole month of October, there are certain things which are celebrated in October. First one is Family History Month. Now, most of us do like to know a little bit about our family history. Well, here's your excuse to delve into it. It's Dysautonomia Awareness Month, which is basically autonomous nervous system and the understanding of that, and the different conditions which can affect the nervous system. And these things do affect sometimes people we know, and they sort of keep quiet about it. One thing which is pretty well known about is that it's National Domestic Violence Month, and you know that is not a good thing for people to do that sort of thing. So the more awareness there is to reduce that, the better. It's also Mental Health Month. Now, mental health is a very, very big subject, and it can cover all sorts of things, but you can always get a little bit depressed, and if somebody passes away, or a friendship ends, or a relationship or marriage ends, some of that is straightforward grieving, but sometimes grieving can drift into, you know, a mental problem. So these are things which one needs to be aware of. National Fair Trade Month, that's basically to promote products of countries in different parts of the world, bypassing some of the global corporations who tend to exploit people in those countries. It's National Cyber Security Awareness Month. Now here's a very good one here. Anyone who has a cat, it's Black Cat Awareness Month for October. So look after your black cat. National Pizza Month, SUDEP Action Month, and that's sudden unexplained death in epilepsy. So if you know somebody with epilepsy, one of the problems they can have is sudden unexplained death. It's also Dyslexia Awareness Month, and more people have got those sort of issues, and who knows whether it's caused by drugs which people take, and you know they're not informed about the downsides of these things they take. I mean, we certainly know that's been the case with the COVID-19 vaccines, where there have been all sorts of consequences of people taking them. It's also National Fire Prevention Month, very, very important. Check you've got fire alarms in your home, check that, you know, if there was a fire, you'd know how to deal with it and exit safety. It's Computer Learning Month. I think some of us feel we're learning all the time, but there we go. It's Down Syndrome Awareness Month, National ADHD Awareness Month, and that's to do with having issues on focusing by being sort of overactive and impatience. People who know about this know that it's something to deal with. And then we've got the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, a very serious issue, but I'm a great believer in natural immunity, which can be brought about by using natural herbs and remedies. And it's Emotional Intelligence Awareness Month. Now, it's very important because sometimes people so much go by things like straightforward IQ, and it doesn't actually mention, you know, your actual emotional intelligence, which is very important. So just looking, I hope we're live, because I've seen some comments sort of saying people have are not sort of seeing, so yeah, I'll just assume everything is all right. I got in a panic with one of the comments. I think we are still live. Anyway, last night I watched Question Time, and as usual, I don't know why I watch it, because the BBC finds it impossible to find a balanced panel, and as usual, there are a couple of issues where basically they all have the same opinion, and this is now many weeks running where they've been incapable of finding a panellist who will speak up on the issue of the fact that there's an argument for the UK not to be involved in the Ukraine at all. And this is all to do with the BBC and other media completely shutting down any debate about Ukraine. They only want their propaganda. They go this propaganda about the Ukraine, and it's just a very sad state of affairs when the media is so controlled. I mean, what I find is just so hypocritical is the government says we must stand by Ukraine because we're standing by democratic values. You know, Ukraine is not democratic and free. They lock up people who disagree with them. They ban political parties. It's just crazy. And to say they're a free and democratic country is grossly misleading the country. But anyway, there have been some other things which came up over the last day or so. Liz Truss, instead of saying something like I'm a proud Christian, said at one meeting, I am a Zionist. Now, of course, that's not saying you're a particular religion, and I'm not sure if she even knows what it means, but if we assume that she knows what the word Zionist means, it does mean that it's not just simply supporting the state of Israel, because plenty of people support the state of Israel, but they're not Zionists. And Zionism actually means Jewish people are controlling a much better a space of land than just Israel, and in fact it goes further to even being controlling the whole world. So I think, you know, one's got to have a sense of proportion and remember that Zionism is not necessarily to do with the state of Israel or supporting the rights of Jewish people in not just Israel but throughout the world. So let's have some accuracy on things. Noticed recently, as a number of people did, that they're scaremongering about COVID and pushing the COVID-19 vaccine, and these are all the more reasons why we've got to work hard and get the truth out there to the public. And I've noticed that David Dimbleby has recently said that he thinks the BBC is too sensitive about dealing with issues to do with the royal family. It's not just the BBC, but I probably would sort of agree with that. I sort of think that all the media should be respectful regarding the royal family, but it doesn't mean to say that some of the things which need to be questioned shouldn't be questioned. And one of the things was the tax status of the Duchy of Cornwall and various other issues, and yes, they quite rightly should be questioned. So it's been an interesting survey which has said that fewer than half of young people surveyed on the subject of the UK's involvement in the Ukraine actually support that involvement. Now I'm sort of surprised about that, because with the absolute pure brainwashing the public's having, it would surprise me if virtually everyone was in favour, but at least some people are seeing through the sort of propaganda. Let's just have a little bit of an update of what's happening with Unity News. Those who keep in touch with things will be well aware that David Clues and the whole team constantly every day, either via our live broadcasts or with the articles and comments we put out regularly, that we're fighting on for the freedom cause as much as we can. But the key thing is we're bringing to light stories which other people either haven't got the capability to bring to light or don't dare bring to light. Please, if you haven't already or you want to contribute more, just bear in mind if you do contribute to Unity News, it will ensure that we offer better quality programmes and more of them. So I think you know that will happen because we do stick to what we say. The latest thing I was going to mention was the situation with the NHS, because we had a situation where we had Steve Barclay as the Secretary of State for Health. He didn't last long, and now we've got Therese Coffey, a friend of Liz Truss. Now, I'm not going to go into what's been happening there in too much detail, but it does seem as though there's been a disastrous new start to what's going on there. We've had these promises that we're going to see doctors more quickly and everything else. But then when you look at in between the lines, you discover that the government's paying money to doctors' surgeries to have doctors' assistants. And these people are, would you believe, going to be doing jabbing of COVID-19 jabs, but they're also going to be doing minor appointments for doctors. Now, my own experience and from what I've heard from others is that when somebody else other than the doctor sees a patient, more often than not, it simply slows up that person getting to see the doctor when they do need to see them. So how about instead let's have more training and more UK-based doctors and more UK-based nurses. And if there's a crisis in the health service, you have to bear in mind why. Now, obviously, financial reward is a key factor, but when the government drove a lot of people out of the health service by insisting that they had the COVID-19 vaccine, what did they expect? So they've got to stop doing that sort of thing and respect people's freedom of choice on their own health issues. So that is something which definitely needs to be dealt with. Let's just hope and pray that the NHS doesn't get worse, but the signs are not that good, with millions of delayed appointments and operations. It's an absolute disaster, unfortunately. When I was mentioning Unity News, one of the key things is you won't find Unity News being selective on the issue of free speech. Now, what many people may have noticed, or I'm sure they will have done, is there are certain things which a number of the media just will not touch at all. And that actually includes people who you would expect to believe in free speech. But I'll give you an example. Talk radio, TV, GB News, the petition to have a referendum on the Coronavirus Act, which was successful, the petition to have a public inquiry into the COVID-19 vaccines again successful, they refused to mention those petitions, completely no platform them. The latest one is the petition to have a referendum on the Ukraine issue, because this government's gone into a proxy war in Ukraine with absolutely nil mandate from the electorate, and very sadly the Labour Party have exactly the same policy. So the only way the public can have their say on this issue is by a referendum. Now this has been completely no platform by everyone. Now when all the media do this, we've got to start being very, very concerned, because obviously the powers that be do not want this issue even discussed, let alone voted on. Now the reason they don't want it discussed is they know that once it is discussed, that all the propaganda they put out to the British public will be exposed as a complete and utter sham. So the whole house will come crashing down. So please, everyone out there, we put the Ukraine petition on the link on the chat section. Please do everything you can to promote and sign this petition. And what we really need is for people with lots of followers to promote it. And we need people who are well known to promote it. So it's really important to help in that respect. So what we've got at the moment is we've got people, sometimes people we quite respect and admire, who are speaking up on free speech. It might be on net zero, it might be on something else, but those people are very selective with their free speech because they won't touch the issue of the Ukraine. Now that is very, very worrying indeed. So the small number of organisations who are doing this are to be commended entirely, and there's a growing list of organisations doing it. Obviously in the freedom movement that's been very much done, but one of the problems we have in the freedom movement is there's so much information going around at the moment that when you share that information it's completely swamped by other information, and so many people don't notice it. But I will say this: a few weeks after we launched the Ukraine petition, another petition was launched saying due to the economic situation, and it didn't mention the cause being Ukraine at all, that there was a need for a general election to be called. Now, that petition, right from the offset, was heavily promoted by local and national media, and it was way under our petition and heavily increased, and it's now something like about 550,000. So this just shows what influence the mainstream media had. I mean, to give you an example, it was promoted by GB News and it went up 40,000 the next day. That's the sort of influence the other media have. And it just so happens this petition is a convenient safety valve. There's never going to be another general election called in the next few months, and it wouldn't make any difference whatsoever to the Ukraine policy, because the Labour Party got the same policy as the Conservative Party. But this is an example of the distraction policies which were done by the establishment to try and prevent discussion of issues which the freedom movement brings forward. we at Unity News will continue to stand up for free speech and not be selective on it. You know, I don't know how some of these people who we have some respect for can say that they support free speech when they don't. Anyway, a quick mention for those who knew Jeff Wyatt. We know that very sadly he did pass away, and his funeral is not only going to take place later this month, but there's also going to be a sort of protest memorial for him in London. So we celebrate the people who worked hard for the freedom cause. Now, I'm going to have to shorten what I said about the strike situation. Basically, the next strike looming up is the Royal College of Nursing, and again, that's because of how the government have treated the nursing profession, and it will indeed be very sad if there's a strike, because it will put back people who need appointments and operations even more. Now, for those of you who haven't, who've got lots of issues to do with the government's public handling of the COVID-19 issue, Baroness Heather Hallett is handling this, so good to look that up and send an email in putting your point of view across, and if you want to be seen, asked to. All I will say is we know that a lot of these inquiries, they're a put-up job and they're going to not delve too deeply, but we have to use those options. Next issue is the medical declaration which was put out. This is like the Great Barrington Declaration Mark II. That continues to have more signatures added to it, and there's a group of people in the freedom movement who are focusing on that. So you know, there's basically a lot happening. Now, the other thing I need to mention is you might remember that there was a delayed parliamentary debate into having a public inquiry into COVID-19 vaccine safety. We haven't been given the new date for this debate, but as soon as we are given that date, we will do what we were going to do before, because it was going to be the 19th of September. We were going to be arranging a very big day which culminated, this would obviously be outside Parliament, but it was also going to culminate in a celebration afterwards, where we would be socialising, and in particular would be celebrating some of the successes the freedom movement have had, because we've certainly had many successes which we should be exceptionally proud of. One of the things which came up at the Conservative Party conference was, not surprisingly, the issue of migrants and immigration. We've actually got a new Home Secretary. Personally, many people would know I thought Priti Patel was an absolute disaster, and basically I was most pleased because this new Home Secretary actually said she was proud of the British Empire. Now, it's sad when it comes to the point where a grateful sort of somebody from a family of East African Asians who moved here, that it has to be them showing their gratefulness and speaking the truth about the British Empire and other people in politics, you know, being too afraid to actually stand up for the British Empire, but sort of well done for that. Now there are sort of various proposals as to how to deal with the migrant situation, and we'll have to see what happens on that. But although I don't sort of agree with the new Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, on a number of issues, I think she's certainly going to try harder on the immigration issue than her predecessor. Now, I'm hoping to finish fairly soon because a number of people do like to switch over to UK column, which normally sort of starts a few minutes past 1 o'clock. Anyway, the one thing we will be doing with Unity News is there's a lot of activities coming up for the freedom movement, and we'll certainly be letting you all know about them. What is pretty obvious at the moment is that economically it's going to be very, very difficult for all of us in the UK with the consequences of the government's Ukraine policies, and you know, it sort of beggars belief that they're prepared to make the British public suffer so much. And of course what they're doing is they're saying this is all happening because of Putin's war, which is a complete and utter untruth, because the majority of countries in the world are actually neutral regarding the Ukraine situation. A large proportion of those have done their own economic and energy deals with Russia, and the reason we can't get we can't get the cheap energy we did have before this crisis is because we have ganged up with the NATO countries and the EU, of course, plus America, and embarked on this aggressive policy regarding the Ukraine, when certainly from the UK's point of view it's of no strategic British interest whatsoever, and no economic interests. In fact, the economic interest of the United Kingdom is to stay well out of the conflict, but you know, the government is expecting us to put up with more and more and more, and now there's even talk of power cuts, and this is why we all must really get together and demand that this Ukraine policy is changed. And I would like anyone who wants to get involved in direct campaigning on this to get in touch with me, because we're trying to get together a team of people who are going to do something about this. And of course in the freedom movement we've been very stretched doing many issues, but it comes to the point where the government has got to be confronted with the urgent need to abandon their reckless Ukraine policies. So, and this is made all the more necessary by the fact that the OPEC countries met a couple of days ago, and they decided that they're going to be restricting the supply of oil. There's going to be, if anything, the price is going to be going up, and that is going to be disastrous, because remember, before the crisis in the Ukraine, before February, you know, fuel prices weren't too bad. You know, they were even under £1.10. Obviously now they're in the 160 to 175, depending upon where you get your petrol per litre. Same with diesel. but we certainly cannot afford to have fuel prices going up yet again. The consequences would be absolutely disastrous, not just for individuals, not just for families, but for businesses. And the current economic policy of the government is such that already businesses are going out of business. There's rising interest rates, high inflation, you name it, there's a problem with the economy. And this could be a very good outcome for the freedom movement, because if we're seen to be acting responsibly on economic issues, which we are, because all the people I know in the freedom movement are not basically on Ukraine or Russia's side. They're on the side of the United Kingdom. What's in the best interest of the United Kingdom? Yes, as we've got to know the conflict more, we've come to understand that it's more a question of there's a globalist controlled government through President Zelensky, and you know, it's a globalist control conflict, and it's nothing to do with freedom and liberty at all. Then you know, one has a more balanced view of the situation, and doesn't have the view which the mainstream media have of saying the corrupt Ukraine government is somehow wonderful and doesn't do a thing wrong. But my final parting comment is, we all know from the mainstream media we have propaganda on behalf of the Ukraine government, generally having a go at the Russians. The latest one was there was a sort of bucket of gold teeth, and it was alleged that these teeth were taken out of Ukrainians who'd been tortured. Can you believe? Anyway, it now transpires, because of one of these mainstream media actually did some investigative journalism, they discovered that all these gold teeth came from a dentist. So there we go. I would say question everything which is said about Ukraine if it comes from the BBC, Sky and various other mainstream media. So anyway, it's time to go. So thank you all for viewing and listening today, and you can switch over to UK column for those who wish to do that. But let's get onwards and upwards with the battle for freedom. There's many battles to fight before we achieve what we deserve as British citizens: full freedom, full liberty. Thank you very much. Bye then.